Today we're out in Southern California with my very good friend Alan Jaeger with Jaeger Sports. I'll give you a little background on this, on how I was introduced to Alan. What happened was I was coaching in college, I was playing semi-pro baseball, and I started working with kids. And if you've looked at any of our videos, what you know is that I was astonished immediately by the lack of instruction on proper throwing. I know that not only is this an incredibly integral part of the game, if you can throw well, you're literally a weapon. And by the way, I don't mean just pitching, I mean position work also. It is a defensive weapon, but also it's potentially injurious. And I was amazed at the lack of information and the misinformation. Somebody turned me on to his tapes. He has a great throwing program. I contacted him as we started this. We've become good friends, and want to introduce Alan. We're shaking hands
on camera. Okay, make it official.
Alan, what I wanted to do to start off with is just give us a brief. Tell us, I know what it is, but give us a little brief history of your background and how you came to do this.
Well, I went to Cal State Northridge, and that's kind of where I stopped playing my junior year. And always was a huge long toss guy. Got heavy into the mental game in college, and really I just was a pitching coach doing lessons. But what was different is that I was really big into distance throwing, long toss, arm conditioning, arm strength. It wasn't just about getting guys on a mound and teaching them how to throw a curveball. I felt like it was really important to delve more with the foundation of your arm, right? So bands came in sometime in the mid-90s, and so between the bands from an arm care point of view, long toss from an arm care and arm strengthening point of view, and not to mention feel, athleticism, mechanical, sync and benefit, that's when it all started coming together. So I'd say somewhere in the early to mid-90s is when I really started putting this whole program together, and it's been great. We've just had so much good feedback over the years.
Well, you've had an enormous amount of success. I mean, you have. If you get a chance, you should take a look definitely on Alan's website, Jaeger Sports. And look at his products and his taste, but what you'll just be struck by is the clients he has, the people that work with his program. Clayton Kershaw, Barry Zito, Dan Herron, who else? Huge amount of Cole Hamels. Just an enormous number of really top people are advocates of your program.
Yeah, and also what's kind of cool is we've had a chance to consult with like 6 major league teams, and we feel like major league organizations are now getting on board. Ironically, the college world is so into long toss and distance throwing and arm conditioning that it's really been more of the pro world that I think is starting to figure out like how important conditioning is and throwing more as opposed to babying arms is.
I don't think we have time necessarily today, but we could touch on it a little bit. This is the big deal. And see, having been a professional for about the same amount of time, I've been a professional for about 25 years, and discovering this gap of information and gap of program in this sport. What I've always, and it applies to everything, not just throwing, but there is professional and college ball. And there doesn't seem to be a lot of and then there's recreation in high school and everything else. And what I don't understand, I've never been able to understand, is this is a sport that's based on mental correctness, of doing things correctly. This is not a sport that you can overcome by sheer athleticism. And yet there is an information gap between it. Kids, one of the things that you and I have talked about is that there is so little information, correct information, that translates down to the youth game. And I know that your arm injuries are at an epidemic level. Tommy John, shoulder, and things like this. And what we want to get across here is that Alan's programs are not just to make, I'm not here just about making you great. but they're preventative, they're prophylactic, they're arm strength and conditioning.
Sure.
And that's what there is that. What do you think about, I have to ask because it's the big topic, what do you think about pitch counts and things like this and number of throws?
Well, I think that pitch counts are maybe a necessity more at the professional level, because I feel like so many of the organizations are babying the arms as far as conditioning wise. So if
Right.
you condition the arm in a minimized way, then you have to kind of support it with a pitch count. With that said, if you look at a lot of the college programs that really do a lot of throwing, pitch counts to me are not that relevant. And also they have a 7-day rotation as well. So it doesn't mean there isn't a time and a place for pitch counts. I think pitch counts are important with the younger kids as well. But I just actually did an interview for an article about this, and to me, it's not so much about the pitch counts. It's really about how many pitches are you throwing, and what's your recovery period like. I'm a huge recovery period guy. So, if you threw 40 pitches on a Monday, are you taking the proper amount of rest before you get on the mound again? That to me is maybe more important than anything. But obviously, pitch counts that you can definitely abuse a kid no matter what, whether you're in great
Right.
shape or not. So I just think pitch counts are, as I mentioned to the guy who was doing this article, I said, look, this is not so much about figuring out pitch count issue. I said this is about figuring out what is the lack of conditioning issue. And that's where the main attention needs to be. Arms need to be conditioned, in my opinion, much better. And if they are, pitch counts are now secondary.
Right. Well, as you know, one of the reasons that this is because nobody knows. There are in some of the leagues in Japan, Korea, pitchers regularly throw huge amounts back in the day. And interestingly enough, there were, when Bob Feller, you read stories about Bob Feller and Sandy Koufax, and these guys throwing, and a lot of times they were 4-man rotations. They weren't even 5-man rotations, and they were going 8, 9. They were going 7, 8 innings, not 5, and a middle, and then a guy that comes in, and you know what I'm saying. It wasn't 4 relievers and get to the closer. 5 innings, 4 relievers get to the closer. It was a starter and a closer.
Sure.
And these guys were throwing enormous amounts, and yes, there were injuries. One of the things I like so much about your program is not only the conditioning, but the mechanics also. I'll do a throwing lesson. And I say correct mechanics is the key, that we have to be sequentially correct. I think it was Nolan Ryan I borrowed this phrase from, as he said that pitching is a sequence of correct positions. And interestingly enough, and then my phrase, because I have a background in physical education, is that the last thing in that chain is the arm, and it's the weakest link. So what's happening is if that kinetic chain is incorrect, then the stress goes to the weakest link, and what you see is pitchers. So it's conditioning, it's rest and recovery, but also what I see, and this goes to rest and recovery, if somebody is tired, the arm starts dropping, they start rushing their mechanics, and then that stress goes, and that's where injuries come in also. So what I'd like to do is Alan's going to demonstrate what his conditioning program is, some of the stuff he does, and then we're going to get back to some questions with him, and then we're going to throw a little bit.